So Alex Jones has everyone mad again. It seems like almost every month at this point there's a new story coming out on why I should be mad at Joe Rogan and mad at Spotify for having Joe Rogan or his podcast. It's gotten to a point of almost complete lunacy in my opinion, you know, I don't really understand why people make such a big deal out of these things, but I mean, I guess people are going to, so I guess the reason that everyone is upset this time is because of Joe Rogan's most recent podcast guest, okay? Now, Joe Rogan has people from all kinds of backgrounds come on his show. Honestly, that's one of the things that I actually like most about the show is that Joe Rogan actually seems to interview people from, you know, all kinds of different thoughts. You know, they can have crazy political opinions, they can have, you know, the mainstream political opinion, they can do something that most people can't do. He's had so many different people on the show that I couldn't even name, like, a very cohesive list of a lot of the guests. I mean, thousands of episodes. People like Elon Musk, Kanye West, Neil deGrasse Tyson, like, there's been so many people on there, man. But his most recent guest, Alex Jones, and also, I believe, Tim Dillon, has now started a pretty big controversy, okay, with people claiming to have canceled their Spotify subscriptions due to this. When I checked, it was trending #1 on Twitter. Alex Jones and Joe Rogan were both trending, so to give you guys a quick rundown here, Alex Jones is known for being a far-right conspiracy theorist and the host of InfoWars. He's known pretty well for the outlandish statements that he makes, for his conspiracy theories that he has perpetuated on his show, for the often ridiculous things that he has said, and also some of the more offensive / socially unacceptable / against the societal norm things that he's also said. He's well known for, I believe, denying Sandy Hook. He's perpetuated the idea of false flag massacres here in the United States. Tim Dillon, I believe, is a right-leaning comedian. I'm not sure. I don't really want to place a label without knowing for sure if he's right-wing or if he leans right or what his political beliefs are. I don't really know too well, to be honest. I don't know. I've never seen anything from Tim Dillon other than this podcast episode. People make the claim that he is right-leaning, though, so I guess we'll go ahead and I guess put an asterisk, I guess, on that label. I don't know. So these two were recently in an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, which, by the way, has signed a pretty huge deal with Spotify, reportedly worth like $100 million and everything, and there's been a lot of controversy about that already because a lot of Spotify's employees have claimed that the Joe Rogan Experience is anti-LGBTQ, they've made some transphobic comments from guests in the past, and they were claiming that they were going to file a strike and kind of walk out of the job or whatever if Joe Rogan's show was not taken off. Spotify has repeatedly defended their acquisition of the show and have also repeatedly defended their decision to allow creative control to stay in the hands of Joe Rogan, aka allowing him to have whoever he wants on his show. So having these two on the show, which by the way Alex Jones has been on there before, and you know, having them on the show, I understand why people don't like Alex Jones. I really do. I understand why people don't like what he is, what he has to say. It's understandable, you know, but people have freaked the fuck out. So here's a list that I saw in a Twitter image that shows some of the reactions, I guess, to this episode here. We got, here's Joe Rogan spreading anti-vax conspiracy theories with Alex Jones and the apparently pro-blank comedian Tim Dillon. Great job giving this a platform at Spotify. There are plenty of interesting debates about how to navigate free speech in the current age. None of them need to entertain for a second whether Alex Jones should be given a long interview on one of the biggest, most lucrative podcasts in the world. Such a bad look, Spotify. Several people claiming that they canceled Spotify memberships / subscriptions due to this entire thing here. Now, a lot of claims are made about the legitimacy of information on this, I guess, podcast episode, because obviously, you know, Alex Jones is known for having a lot of crazy conspiracy theories and saying a lot of wild shit. So, one thing I do want to point out, I haven't seen the full episode yet, so maybe that affects my understanding of this, but from what I have seen of it, it seems like they actually fact-checked Alex Jones a lot on what he had to say. I'm not sure if this was like a mandated thing for this episode by Spotify or what it was, but they actually did fact-check him pretty openly on the show. So I feel like it's a little disingenuous how a lot of people are reacting, because by these reactions you would think that like Joe Rogan and Alex Jones were just like, yeah, Sandy Hook never happened, you know, vaccines aren't real, vaccines are garbage. And there was just like no information like provided. There was no research, like Jamie didn't pull anything up on the screens. There was no fact checking, it was just a couple guys saying shit, right? But While that is kind of what the Joe Rogan experience is, there was some fact-checking that went on. I mean, by this reaction, you would think there was literally no fact-checking and they were just spewing ridiculous shit. While, of course, a lot of ridiculous shit was said, and a lot of things that I don't agree with were said, I do realize that people have that opinion, and they're allowed to have those opinions. Now, this is where shit gets really tricky, right? Because it seems like a lot of people are really about free speech until it's somebody that they don't like, or it's somebody that they disagree with, which is something that I just simply don't get behind. The thing about having free speech is that everyone has to be able to have it, okay? And free speech ultimately means that ideas that you don't agree with, it means that they're going to be promoted at some point. Somebody's gonna think differently than you. Sure, it can be fucking ridiculous that they think that, and you can think they're a complete moron for believing it, but you should not have the right to tell them that they cannot say that, or that they literally should be deplatformed and not have the ability to say that. The problem with, you know, the internet and the way that it's currently designed, I think, is that so much of public discourse now takes place on the internet. And to a certain extent, if you're banned from the most popular social media platforms in the world, you have been silenced, you know? And that's the thing about Alex Jones. I think he says a lot of fucking outrageous things that are just ignorant. But let's be honest, the big point of having Alex Jones on the Joe Rogan Experience isn't for me to sit there and be like, oh yeah, you know, Sandy Hook didn't happen. I really don't believe in vaccines anymore. It's so I can sit there and just laugh at the fucking lunacy. I'm not watching an episode with Alex Jones and Joe Rogan expecting to be enlightened. If I want to learn something about a topic, like if I'm questioning the legitimacy of a vaccine, the last place I'm gonna fucking look for to learn about that is the Joe Rogan podcast, okay? I'm gonna be going to a doctor. I'm gonna be getting some scientific evidence. I'm gonna be looking into some fucking research. There's gotta be some data, some numbers, trials, all kinds of shit, dude. I'm not just gonna be like, oh, Alex Jones said, you know, this didn't happen, therefore it didn't happen. And guess what? Most people can differentiate between stupid shit that Alex Jones is saying and reality. A lot of people reacting to this, I feel like, figure that we're all a bunch of just fucking dum-dums, like, you know, I knock on my head and nothing's there, and that, like, if I watch something that I disagree with, like, I absorb that information and it replaces my reality. Believe it or not, most human beings have the ability to be skeptical. And when it comes to what Alex Jones has to say, oh, I'm more than skeptical, you know what I'm saying? So, it brings up this age-old question, right? You know, should we censor things that we don't like being said? Sure. Once again, Alex Jones says some ridiculous shit, but at the end of the day, he has the right to say most, if not all, of what he's saying. And it's not really up for me to decide, at least in my personal opinion, on whether or not he should have that ability. And in my opinion, it's not up to the Spotify employees either, because they didn't sign that fucking deal. And at the end of the day, as harsh as this is to say, they're all expendable. Spotify can hire new people. So when it comes down to it, man, you know, the thing about shows like this, like Joe Rogan's show, is that you're gonna disagree sometimes with what people have to say on there, or it's gonna be stupid. But I would rather almost take that shit head on than to validate it more, okay? Because here's the point that I think so many people forget when it comes to this whole free speech debate and whether or not deplatforming works. The thing about somebody like Alex Jones is, he says crazy shit, okay? We hear it and most of us disagree with it, okay? But the problem is when he's kicked off of relatively all platforms and he's now, you know, regressed to this one corner of the internet, you've validated everything that he said. Because for this whole time, he's been like, oh, you know, the people don't want to hear, like, you don't want people to hear this. The government doesn't want you to hear this. The elites don't want you to hear this. And then the elites of our society, they see the shit that he's saying and they kick him off of these platforms. Now, literally, he can just be like, oh, I was right. See? I was right about them not wanting me to say what I was saying. I was right about this. Why am I not right about everything else? And then the fucking loonies who believe everything he's saying, you've now validated what they say. The best way to take on conspiracy theories that don't make any sense and to combat misinformation is to combat it head on. Educate people with facts and information, you know what I'm saying? If you got a fucking dumb friend who watched the Alex Jones episode and all of a sudden, you know, everything in reality isn't reality, vaccines don't work, the fucking moon is made of cheese, water bottles have microchips in them. If you got one of those friends, just simply show them evidence. Just simply debate them on stupid shit that they say. Let your friends know that they're being dumb-dumbs by believing everything that someone says, right? But when you constantly tell them that they don't have the right to say what they're saying, all you're doing is make them not only believe what they are saying more, but you're validating it to other fucking dum-dums out there who are going to believe ridiculous things. And at the end of the day, suppressing what they're saying doesn't even make it go away. You're not silencing that shit that they're saying. You're not making a big point against them or anything. In fact, all you're really doing now is you're silencing the conversation on one side, on one element of it. And I mean, at the end of the day, who are you really to decide that this speech isn't the right speech? Because at that point, there is no free speech. And people are going to be like, well, there's no free speech to begin with because Spotify can air whatever it wants. Exactly, and that's why they've repeatedly defended Joe Rogan's show. You think they didn't know what they were getting into when they gave him $100 million fucking dollars for exclusivity rights? You really think that? You believe they didn't know that Joe Rogan had a controversial guest lineup in the past? You think they didn't know that he was going to have some controversial people on again? What company puts out $100 million to one podcast and doesn't research the catalog and doesn't look into it? Spotify does not give a fuck that you're upset about this, okay? They don't care. Because at the end of the day, it's the most popular podcast in the world. It's making them a fuck ton of money, and you being upset about it does not hurt them in the slightest, okay? So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. Thank you to my channel members. Your support helps my channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus. Well, I think I'm going to go finish this episode and signing out.